Hi, it's Bumble. Welcome back to my channel. For once, I mentioned in a separate video about movies I'd thought about watching, and then I actually made sure to sit and watch one. And that usually never happens, usually just because I forget and I don't really like listen to these before or after I post them. I just kind of make them and I make sure to say what I want to say in one take and then off they go. But I do at least save some of these, so that's why sometimes when I mention movies and I never get around to watching them, it's just because I forget. This one was fun to rewatch. I for some reason had thought it was like a Disney movie this whole time, like one of the Disney live action ones, but it's not. I don't know if it's because it was a princess movie or it's not a princess movie. The main character isn't a princess, but it like kind of gives that vibe a little bit. I haven't watched this movie since I was little. I thought as well for some reason that I'd like owned it on DVD because I remember seeing this before when I was younger. Maybe I'd seen it on the Disney Channel and that's why, or probably seeing it on TV when I was younger, because I definitely didn't like see this in theaters or anything. Forgot this movie's from 2004 as well. It's like a bit older than I thought. Like I knew it was early 2000s, like you can tell. But I'm glad that Anne Hathaway plays the main character who, I mean, like I said, she's not a princess, but kind of gives that vibe where she almost reminds me of like Rapunzel, of being like very headstrong and stuff. Especially because I've seen her on like some of the SNL skits where she's playing like Mary Poppins or like Dorothy and stuff, where I thought like, yeah, she could play like a Disney princess type character. This movie, if anything, it reminds me of Shrek, where it just like makes fun of fairy tale stuff, and I think that's just what makes it fun to rewatch. Especially now that I'm older, I feel like I pay attention to it more, where like when I was younger, you know, I'm here for like the fairy tale stuff. This movie has a lot of like political things like in universe and stuff, and there's lore and this whole like, besides Ella trying to break her curse, it's also about going to like confront the evil uncle and stuff. And because the kingdom, all the races are like, because there's like fantasy races, there's humans, there's elves, there's like giants and stuff, which I think is pretty cool, honestly. But they're all like segregated away from each other, and they're being treated poorly by like the kingdom that's in charge of everything, that's run by the humans. So Ella is like kind of trying to fight for their rights and stuff, even though she can't really fight for her own, which I'll explain that actually, because this is a movie where the main character, she's given this gift by a fairy, quote unquote gift. It's a gift of obedience, where if someone tells her to do something, she has to do it, even if she doesn't want to, or even if she doesn't know how. It's like her body's basically like forced to. And then it's funny because it turns out the way she can kind of get rid of the curse is just by telling herself to not be obedient anymore, but she only like figures that out at like the very end, of course. But it's funny to me because that's such an easy way to break it, but like at the same time I understood why it took so long. So she goes on this journey to try to break the curse, and then along the way, because it's also like an adventure movie and stuff, she gains these companions, including like the prince of the kingdom, which I actually like that he was one of her companions. I thought that was cool, because then that gives them a chance for the two characters to like get to know each other and stuff. In that way, it kind of reminds me a lot of like Tangled. Tangled's also one of my favorite Disney movies. I actually, side note, just bought it at a swap meet a couple days ago. I got it for $1. They were just selling a bunch of DVDs. So I'm excited to have that and to watch it. I'm not saying like, oh, that's gonna be next or whatever. Maybe. It just depends when I get access to the DVD player again here at home. But yeah, this movie reminds me of like Shrek and the whole like making fun of fairy tales, but also Tangled and like the storyline and the main character. And so that's probably why I liked this movie so much. But yeah, I haven't probably seen this since I was like 10. So I remembered some stuff. I specifically remembered the music. because it's kind of funny where like the characters dress like they're from, like, it's supposed to be like a medieval age like fairy tale, but the characters have elements in their like costumes or accessories and stuff that are totally like late 90s early 2000s, which I find really funny, especially the way Ella's stepsisters dress. They wear like literally the same outfit throughout the whole movie and everything. Or the fairy godmother character, who I find really funny and how completely useless she is. Her name's Lucinda. She dresses like she's from like a 90s girl group. And none of the other fairies dress like that. Lucinda's a funny character in that she only shows up twice, and it's like the places you'd expect for like a fairy godmother type character. She isn't even like Ella's fairy godmother, actually. She's literally just this fairy that like shows up at the beginning and gives Ella a gift even though her parents don't want her to. And the gift is obedience, and she literally only gives that because she finds Ella as a baby really annoying. She wants her to stop crying and then decides to give her the gift. And she describes Ella as being like she'll be the perfect child now because she's so obedient, but it basically means that Ella doesn't have free will. I mean, she has free will the rest of the time in her life. It's only when she's given an order that she has to follow it. When she's not under someone's order, she can just go do whatever she wants. And Ella's like a very headstrong person that like stands up for other people anyway, so the curse is like constantly getting in her way. I mean, it's a gift, it's a spell, it's not really like a curse, but the characters, refer to it as a curse because it basically is. It's a really shitty gift. And then Lucinda... Oh. Okay, sorry about that. I have my phone volume really high because a lot of the time I don't hear it, and one of my relatives keeps calling me a lot, so I know that sound probably got caught by the microphone. Anyway, Lucinda, what was I saying? Oh yeah, Lucinda, besides the fact that she gives Ella this gift that the baby wouldn't want, no one would want, and the parents don't want her to. Oh yeah, speaking of Ella's parents, because Ella has a mom and dad. The dad's not really part of the plot. Like, the only thing he does is marries the stepmother, and that's kind of about it. And eventually Ella's mom dies. But her family, Ella's family, has this, like, household fairy named Mandy, who also lives there. And I forgot that she was just like a person that helps out around the house and stuff, because she's there with the mom when the fairy shows up when Ella's a baby and stuff, and she's sort of there at the beginning as well, the house fairy. I would have thought she would have gotten like fired or something once the stepmother moves in, but no, she just lives there the whole time. She's not like a super important character, but she's there. It is nice that like after Ella's mom dies that there's someone else there that like knows that Ella is like cursed and stuff. But when I was younger, I just like, I knew one of them was the mom, and I didn't know the fairy was like a fairy that just like helps them out and stuff, Mandy. So I just had thought that Ella had two moms the whole time, and I only finally realized like that's not the case until I watched the movie today. Because Ella does have a dad, but the dad I think is only in like 2 scenes, and that's kind of about it. He never really like interacts with Ella that much or anything, which is shitty because her stepsisters treat her like crap. I mean, I know this is supposed to be based on like Cinderella and stuff, that's why she's named Ella. But yeah, anyway, Lucinda also mentions of like, oh, if you don't want this gift, I'm gonna turn your child into a squirrel or whatever. Like, that's shitty, but that also feels like something that fairies would probably do, of like, aren't they usually like tricky and stuff? You have to be like careful around the fae. But Lucinda's a funny character in that Ella spends the entire movie trying to find her, and every once in a while we get to see what Lucinda's up to, and she's out there like drinking too much. She gets a DUI at one point. It's under a different name, because this is a kid's movie, but she pretty much gets like a DUI. She gets like fired from the retirement home for fairies or whatever, which I'm also not sure why it's called that, because she's not like old or anything. And then towards the end she shows up, and it's supposed to be like a Cinderella moment where Ella is being ordered to like kill the prince, so she ties herself up to a tree, and Lucinda shows up, and Ella's like, please, please, you need to take the curse away from me. And the only helpful thing that Lucinda does is mention of like, why don't you get rid of the curse yourself? But of course she doesn't tell Ella how, and then she doesn't let Ella explain. Well, Ella isn't able to actually tell anyone that she's supposed to kill the prince against her will. But she ends up trying to help Ella in like the same way like a fairy godmother would, of like giving her a beautiful dress and sending her to the party. But it ends up being the exact opposite of what Ella needs, because then it ends up with her almost like killing the prince. Like the fairy's the one that actually puts the plot like back into motion, even though Ella like tries to prevent her fate. Which I wondered about that throughout the movie. I thought, like, if she's being ordered to do stuff against her will, what if she like isn't able to move or something? Like, what if a boulder falls on her leg? Is she just forced to like chew her leg off, and she'd have to do the order anyway? But it probably would have worked, because she was like tied out to a tree somewhere. She wouldn't have been able to follow the instructions, but of course the fairy ruins it. But yeah, that's Lucinda. She's like kind of funny in the sense that she's like kind of useless and whatever, but Lucinda thinks she's like the most amazing person ever, and that everyone loves her gifts. Like, she gets super offended when the parents ask like, hey, can you take the gift back? And like, normally I would understand, that completely makes sense, that like if you gave a baby a gift, like a magic gift, and the parents are like, we don't want this, you know, like it's rude to reject a gift, but at the same time it's a gift that's going to make the baby's life so much worse, you know? So that's pretty sucky. Okay, but let me get back into the movie. I just wanted to talk about that specific fairy character. The intro is kind of nice. It shows like a whole overview of the kingdom, and it's actually really big and stuff. I thought that was pretty cool. The song Strange Magic plays at the beginning of the movie, and I wrote in my notes of like, oh, it's been a bit since I've heard that. That's a good song. And then the song like kept playing towards the beginning, and I was like, okay, can we just not have the song play anymore? Eventually it stops. But the music in this is pretty good. Like, it's a lot of like modern stuff. Oh, hold on, I gotta sneeze. Okay, sorry. Let's see, because there's a part when Ella has to sing later on. It's the song, it's the Queen song, Somebody to Love. And I kept thinking that was a song that played at the end, but there's a different song that plays at the end. And I was almost going to skip that part of the movie, and then I remembered, oh yeah, Anne Hathaway can sing, and she sings really well. She does a good job in everything. It's a little awkward to watch the scene, because the character's kind of awkward while she's like singing, but she sounds amazing and everything. But yeah, all the songs in here are pretty fun. The cottage that Ella lives in is so cute, honestly. Like, I expected her to live in just... I don't know why I expected it to be like a really lame house, but it's like this cute little cottage. Even though the step family, you know, the stepmom and the evil stepsisters or whatever judge it immediately, because they're from like a rich family or whatever. I kind of want to paint the cottage, actually. I should have like taken a picture of it from the TV or something, because sometimes they paint like little cottages and things that I see in movies for fun. You know, something I didn't understand was that when Ella's mom is like on her deathbed, she tells Ella like, hey, don't tell anyone about the spell you're under or whatever. And I completely understand that, because she doesn't want anyone to take advantage of Ella, even though it's like pretty obvious for like people to figure out, like, you know, you can kind of get Ella to do anything. But I was thinking, like, why not tell the dad? You know, it's not like he'll punish Ella for it. Like, it's her father. He loves her. He's not evil or anything like the step parents and stuff. So, another comparison to Shrek is they'll have like fantasy versions of like modern stuff. Like there's a part where the prince, who has like a billion fangirls in the movie, is having to speak to them, and there was a part where the characters have to wear one of those like I love New York type shirts or whatever, but it's like in the a kind of like older style looking font, or like one of the carriages, I think it's specifically the carriage when the stepmother like first shows up is painted to look like a taxi. I love stuff like that. I find it kind of goofy. Oh yeah, so part of the lore and everything in this movie is that there used to be like a good king, like the prince's original father. His name's Prince Char. Everyone calls him Char. I forgot what Char is short for, but whatever. There was like a good king, and all the different like fantasy races were able to like live in harmony and stuff. And then there's like an evil king that takes over, and he banishes all of the other magical creatures where they have to go live in their own lands across the kingdom or something, and only the humans get to live in like the royal castle or whatever. Carrie Yules plays the evil uncle. I completely forgot about that because I didn't really recognize like his face, but I recognized his voice, even though he's making himself sound like slightly sillier. I think because I'm just so used to him and stuff, where he plays a lot of characters that are blonde, so seeing him where he has black hair, where he has like this little goatee or whatever, I didn't really recognize him. But yeah, he plays the evil uncle, and as soon as you see the uncle on screen, he even has like a snake. It's a CGI. That's like one of the only things I didn't like with this movie, is there's a CGI snake as like his evil companion. Because like evil villains having like an evil little hench person or whatever is usually fine. Like if anything, the evil uncle reminds me of like Jafar, who has Iago as a companion. Maybe it's like taking inspiration from that, but the difference between like the snake and Iago is like Iago, the little bird that's first off voiced by Gilbert Gottfried, so he's gonna be funny and stuff, and he is funny. He's a really fun character. But the snake isn't really funny. It's kind of weird where he sounds very like kind of like sinister, but also whatever. But he's treated as like the comic relief. The CGI for him looks weird, but then again, this is a movie from 2004. So I don't know. But he like sort of serves a plot role where he like kind of secretly follows the main characters around, but I don't think it ends up like paying off or anything. But yeah, Carrie Yules is good at playing like sus characters. He looks like he's having a blast playing this like Jafar type character, and so I need to look up more movies where he plays villains, but just seeing him here where he's playing like a goofy villain in like a kids movie, that just seems fun. What else? The prince guy, I think the actor's name is Hugh Darcy. I know he plays Will in Hannibal. I actually started watching the show Hannibal, but I haven't gotten super far into it. That was the only reason I recognized him, because I didn't recognize him from anything when he was younger, or when I was younger. But yeah, he plays the prince here. That's pretty fun. I totally get why in universe he has like a bunch of fangirls. He's very pretty. Actually, that's the thing that's hard for me watching this movie too. Now that I'm older and like I know that I'm like bi and stuff, where I'm watching this and I'm like, oh, both of the leads are like really attractive. What else? Speaking of the prince, I like the trope. It's not just with like princes and fairy tales, but like other stuff where it's like a popular guy that's like adored by the crowds, except for like the one girl who just thinks he's whatever, and then they end up like genuinely falling for each other. I always think that's kind of fun. I think there's a Disney movie, I think it's called Starstruck, that's also like that, but instead of a prince, it's like a movie star or something. Though it does get kind of a little too goofy sometimes, where they'll be like, oh, you're not like other girls or whatever. They literally do say that in this movie too, and that line's just like ruined for me. because of like the stereotypes of that, of like girls saying like, oh, I'm not like other girls because they're like, I don't know, tomboyish or they like weird things or whatever, but then it turns out like other people like those things too, you know. In that context I don't like that, but like in this where it's like, you know, the one girl who doesn't like the prince or whatever, I think it's kind of fun because they end up becoming companions. But before that happens, the prince ends up having to save her, and it's not that Ella's useless, it's just her curse makes her like become a damsel in distress sometimes, and then he has to save her like 3 times, and then eventually he's just like, hey, can I come with you? It's gonna be so much easier to save you if I'm like with you the whole time. And it ends up working out fine, and then at the end she ends up saving him because he almost gets like poisoned by his uncle and stuff. But they have a fun dynamic where she's actually pissed off at him at first because it's not even anything to do with like his personality or like, you know, her being ungrateful for him saving her. It's just that she knows that the kingdom isn't treating the citizens well, and she thinks like the prince is a part of that, but it's like entirely his evil uncle's decision. But the thing is, the prince doesn't know about that stuff because he was like raised by his uncle, which made me feel a little sorry for him in the sense of like, you know, from everyone else's perspective it's like kind of obvious the uncle is evil and stuff, but for the prince it's probably got to be hard to believe that if like this is your only family member and the person that raised you, and then it turns out that they're evil. You probably have like conflicting feelings about that or whatever, but he ends up finally learning that at the end and stuff. So I can like understand why he doesn't believe. I mean, Ella doesn't know that the uncle is evil either. She just keeps saying of like, oh yeah, you guys are doing like some really shady stuff over there or whatever, and the uncle's like, I mean the prince is like, yeah, we'll have a talk with my uncle about that, he'll sort it out. But it's like, no, he's not. I love being forced to, oh yeah, there's a lot of stuff that happens at the beginning before Ella actually starts her adventure where it's just like her stepsister's kind of treating her like shit a lot of the time. I skipped through most of that because I didn't think it was fun to watch, but the one part that I did see, which was kind of sad, was Ella being forced to say goodbye to her best friend because she's like crying and doesn't want to say it. She's forced to say horrible things, and her friend, I don't remember what the friend's name is this girl who's like one of the non-human fantasy races but like looks completely human. So Ella has to say something like, oh, I would never be friends with whatever you are, but you know, Ella doesn't want to say it. That was kind of sad. It is kind of nice though that the friend shows up at the end at Ella's like wedding and stuff. They never actually get to like talk to each other or anything again, but it's still cool they, you know, end up being friends again. Oh yeah, before Ella goes on her journey, it turns out, and it was kind of funny, that Mandy, the like household fairy or whatever, I think that was something like that. That was like her title, whatever. Ends up giving Ella a gift. Well, it's more like a person. She has a boyfriend that she ended up accidentally turning into a book, and he's kind of like he serves the role of like a magic mirror type thing, actually in like 2 different ways, which I thought was pretty cool, where the cover of the book is like the magic mirror where it's literally like a circle and then a face appears in it every once in a while that can talk, but then with the inside of the book, if you tell it like, oh, show me Lucinda or whatever, it'll show you pictures that are basically like showing you what is that person doing at the moment. But the convenient thing that's kind of sucky is that it can't show you where. He is kind of a fun character. I wish he was used more, because Ella she has 3 companions, the prince being one of them, but he's like the most important. And then her other 2 are an elf and the talking book. And the elf is like a side character at best. And the book isn't really a character. His name's Benny. He's just kind of more of like a plot device that they use. Eventually at the end he does get turned back into a person again, but that's kind of about it. He doesn't get like character development or anything, but it's kind of a bummer because him and the elf are fun characters. Oh yeah, let me talk about the elf too. Her elf companion, I think his name is like Slaylin or something. So elves have this thing, and it's part of the way he's able to like befriend Ella and stuff. They kind of relate to each other, and that elves are forced to like sing and dance, not because they're like elves and that's what they want to do or whatever. It's because the uncle has it so that they can only have certain occupations, which are just in the entertainment industry. But the one that travels with Ella really wants to be a lawyer. So that's why he's going with her to like talk to the uncle about getting a career change and stuff. He doesn't really get to do much lawyering stuff. It's only in like one scene, but still kind of nice, you know. But the book and the elf are kind of fun to watch in that they get into arguments. The talking book is like very sassy, and the elf also has some good lines. So I like their dialogue together, but it's really only at the beginning, because like once the prince ends up joining the party, then the other two kind of don't really get that much screen time. But still, it's cool that she has like multiple companions and stuff. One of the book's lines was kind of funny, where his girlfriend, the fairy, is talking about like how she accidentally turned him into a book, and then he says, "I would have left her a long time ago, but I love her too much. Plus I have no legs." That got a chuckle out of me. Or what were some of the other ones? There's a part where Ella oh yeah, when she originally meets the elf character, I think he's being like targeted by thugs or something in the forest, and Ella's trying to threaten them and says that she knows origami, you know, to like pretend, you know, saying like she knows like karate or something, and they respond with like paper folding, and she's like, "Oh, I was hoping you wouldn't know what that was." I thought that was kind of funny. Ella's gift can be helpful, actually. It's kind of only like one time, but I thought it was kind of interesting, where it's like the gift of obedience. And I mentioned earlier how her body is forced to do things even if she doesn't know how to do them, where the elf character is telling her like, "Yeah, punch that guy, roundhouse kick, whatever." And because those are like technically orders, he's not like ordering her, but they're like coming off as orders, she's like suddenly able to know how to fight, and she actually maintains those skills towards the end somehow. But I thought that was kind of cool in the sense of like, it's like the one plus of her obedience thing, that you can force her to do anything, which can also be like positive things even if she doesn't know how to do them. I kind of wish the movie did explore them more, because I mean, it is kind of a curse in a sense of like, she's being forced to do things she doesn't want to and stuff, and that's really shitty. And I'm glad that she tried to get rid of it the whole time. But having that side effect is kind of cool, and I feel like maybe she could have somehow tried to use that as her advantage. I mean, she does sometimes tell people like, "Oh, tell me to do this," or whatever. And she, you know, doesn't want to tell people about the curse. I understand, but I feel like that could have been really interesting if she like tried to use that aspect of it, like, excuse me, to her advantage. What else? Oh yeah, they end up meeting some ogres. I thought the makeup for the ogres was kind of interesting, where they're all bald, but they have like blue on their like forehead and I think on their cheeks and stuff. I feel like it just fits somehow. The way that they talk, it kind of reminded me of the orcs from Warhammer, actually. I thought that was kind of neat. They don't like really react the same though, because like the ogres in here are actually kind of smart. What else? I actually ended up forgetting about Ella's curse for like the middle chunk of the movie, basically when she's going on her adventure and stuff, which is kind of nice because she finally makes friends, and you know, they're friends. They're not going to order her to do anything that she doesn't want to do, even though none of them know about her curse, by the way. So she's just able to do whatever she wants, and she kind of becomes like group leader. So I thought that was pretty nice for her, you know, because she's ordered around so much at the beginning, especially because she's like being around shitty people like her step family, and then at the end she's kind of not even really like manipulated in the sense that like she's tricked into anything. It's just the uncle forces her to do stuff, taking advantage of her curse thing. But like the middle chunk of the movie's nice, where it's just the adventure and she just gets to be like a normal person. And I like that the group gets some downtime during their adventure too, where they get to like spend the night at inns and things. We end up meeting some of the giant characters. Ella gets to sing at one point. It's kind of like a nice break from just them like wandering around on horses or whatever. Also, I find it funny, there's a unicorn on the cover, and there's a unicorn that shows up like in the intro where it's like a bird's eye view of the kingdom. There's no like actual unicorns within like the story or anything. I feel like it's just there to like make the movie more magical. It's same with the rainbow too. The rainbow shows up at the beginning and it's like a really bad effect. Actually, it looks kind of cheesy. But the rest of the stuff is normal, you know, except for like Anne Hathaway wearing the crown on the cover. I don't think she gets a crown until like the end, when she becomes like the queen of the kingdom and stuff. Like it kind of tricks you into thinking like, you know, her name's Ella Enchanted. It sounds like fancy, and she has a little crown on the cover or whatever. You think it's like, oh, it's a princess movie. That's probably why I thought it was a princess movie. But no, she's not a princess. It's basically Cinderella. She's like a peasant girl. I like that Ella kind of slowly falls in love with the prince, and you can like there's a definitive point in the story where she blurts out when talking to someone that she loves the prince, and that's when she finally realizes she has feelings for him. But you can kind of notice with how she acts earlier in the story, where characters will mention about like how hot the prince is, and Ella will get like just a little frazzled. I don't think she even realizes it, but I thought that was a good detail. And one of the other things too is I'm so used to movies where it's like two characters that like each other, and then they try to kiss, and then they always get interrupted, because you know how in a lot of movies it's like the first kiss has to be, you know, the big one at the end where they're like finally romantic with each other. But I like here that they actually get to kiss. It's probably like midway through the movie that Char and Ella are at like an inn or something. I think it's when they're like with the giants, and they're sitting on this like cushion by a fireplace, which that's also funny in that scene where like the giants are supposed to be tall, so the humans have to be tiny and stuff, but the effects look really weird to make them look small and stuff. But anyway, they end up talking by a fireplace, and they actually end up getting to kiss, and they do kiss at the end too, but I thought that was nice. Something I didn't understand, oh yeah, I'm like skipping through a lot of the movie at this point. We're like towards the last half an hour in terms of what I'm talking about. Something I didn't understand with the evil uncle, maybe it was like a publicity thing in universe, is he ends up killing his brother, who's like the guy that used to be the king, and then he wants to kill the prince. The prince at this point is like going to be coordinated soon and become king himself, but like he also took the time to raise the prince and is only now deciding to kill him. So I'm like, why even bother raising the prince at all? Why not kill him as a baby or something? I mean, I know it could be maybe like, oh, he knows that the prince is like popular with the kingdom and he has his army of like fangirls or whatever, so maybe he's using the prince as like a political tool. And or it could be, you know, it would have been smart if it was like he's blaming all the bad things in the kingdom on like the prince or something. Or, well, actually no, because the uncle's the one that's like legally in charge. Or, you know, you could just make killing him look like an accident or whatever, and then you just would automatically get to be king, because the prince or the evil uncle don't have like heirs or whatever. Like, I feel like he could have just very naturally taken the throne, but he's dumb and does it at the end of like, actually he ends up tricking Ella into killing the prince by ordering her to, but making it so like she can't tell anyone. I thought that was actually pretty smart. And the only way he ends up finding out about that at all is the stepsisters. It's funny to me, there's two stepsisters. One of them wears orange. She's the only one that's like actually plot important and does anything, where she's the one that's like in love with the prince and ends up helping the villain. And the one that wears purple all the time, I remember her name is Olive. she's just kind of there. I feel like she's only there because, you know, in like Cinderella, it's always like the stepmother and the two stepsisters. But I mean, this doesn't follow the plot of like Cinderella to a T anyway. I feel like you could have just had one stepsister, since like that's the one that's actually plot important. The stepsisters, I think, are like more plot important than like the stepmother. If anything, the stepmother actually isn't really like a threat or whatever. She's just kind of the comic relief character. But I feel like in that case, yeah, they could have gotten rid of the stepmother. I feel like the snake didn't need to be a character. I feel like there's almost like too many characters that just kind of were there. Like, we already have other comic relief or like funny characters, so I didn't feel like they were necessary. Hold on, I'm having to like skip through my notes because some of these things I already talked about. And then the ending's kind of cool, where Ella and the friends that they made along the way and stuff, they end up overthrowing the uncle. By really there is actually a fight scene, which is pretty cool, where everyone's like fighting each other in the castle, and they have to like save the prince as well from getting poisoned by the uncle with like a magic crown and whatever, which the uncle ends up accidentally killing himself with that. I don't think they say that he dies, but I feel like it's kind of implied, where he puts on a crown that he like poisoned that has this really bad like green effect coming out of it, and then he just falls over. But I liked how when everybody's fighting each other, Ella and Char are like arguing because the last time they saw each other, he thought Ella was trying to kill him, and at this point she's not under the effects of the curse anymore. You know, I do actually like that the curse is lifted from like Ella, you know, finding confidence in herself, of like ordering herself not to be a victim of the curse anymore, which I feel like also works with like the logic of it, of like she's finally giving herself an order rather than like other people ordering her, so maybe it like overrides something. But I'm glad it's not like a true love thing, it's that like Ella does it herself. I actually really like how it's balanced, actually, where like she ends up in like a damsel in distress role towards the beginning, but it's not by her own will, and then at the end she's the one that like helps to save the prince and stuff. I feel like it's a good balance, but then she also, you know, gets to fall in love with the prince, because one of my things with like modern Disney movies, I'm glad that a lot of them don't focus on like the romance stuff anymore, but I do kind of miss it. I feel like you can have both. That's why it makes me think of like Tangled or Frozen, were like good examples where the princess characters have like a love interest, but like the love interest gets to go with them on the adventure, kind of like with this movie, and is more of like their companion and friend, and they just happen to fall in love along the way and stuff. Not saying that like the main characters in these need to fall in love with their friend like every time, but I think it's kind of nice. I miss it. I think it's like a good balance, like the way this movie does it as well, of like you get the romance, but you also get like a strong female protagonist. Oh yeah, and then at the end, the song, I was trying to remember the whole movie, was Don't Go Breaking My Heart. I thought it was gonna be Somebody to Love at the end, but I'd gotten it mixed up. But that was fun. The only thing is, I think Ella's like dubbed over in that scene for some reason, but like the other times that Anne Hathaway gets to sing, it's her voice. I really like her voice, by the way, especially on higher notes. I think it sounds really pretty. And then there's a dance party ending, which I feel like I'm always kind of mixed on those, where like sometimes in movies they work, sometimes they don't. Sometimes I feel like they're forced. Not in this movie though. It makes sense because like the end of the story is Ella and Char get married, and then everyone starts dancing because it's the dance party thing, but also like they're at a wedding, you dance like after the people get married and stuff, so like that would be the next step anyway. And there were songs throughout the movie anyway. It's not like it just kind of came out of nowhere, because like Ella got to sing earlier. There's like these kind of fun songs that play throughout the movie, not that this is a musical, but like they play in the background and stuff. But yeah, it's just a fun movie overall. I was happy to rewatch it. I need to see if I feel like I need to just watch more like Anne Hathaway movies in general. Because I kept saying at the beginning, like, I mistook this for being a princess movie, and I said she'd be good at playing a princess. And then finally, when I finished talking about this movie, I remembered, oh yeah, she was a princess. The Princess Diaries exist. I don't know if I'll watch those or like Splash, like I had mentioned. I have some other stuff I want to watch. I just remember I'd said like I wanted to watch this specifically, and that's why I was surprised it wasn't on like Disney Plus or anything, because I thought it was a Disney movie. It's on Tubi though, which is pretty cool. I actually have at least like two no I have a movie to watch on Tubi, and then some other movies that I found with like the YouTube free with ads thing, which I've been trying to take advantage of. I didn't realize like how many of those there are, where it's just like the full movie, but they're like it's like free with ads or something. So I might watch more of those. But the next couple movies that I mentioned that I was gonna watch, that were on like Tubi and YouTube and stuff, those I don't think I'm planning to do reviews of. I'm just watching them for me, for fun. But if they're like super amazing or whatever, maybe I'll do a review. We'll see. I'm gonna go watch a movie right now. Well, I have Another Country to watch, and then Cemetery Man. So we'll see how those go. All right, bye bye.